In a time of dire need, 6 of the strongest champions of the human domain disappeared, entering the depths of a perilous nightmare. Effie, Kai, Jet, Morgan, Seishin, Nightwalker. Humanity knew them as brilliant warriors and leaders. In the pantheon of heroes who walked the path of ascension, they were only half a step behind the true deities: Changing Star, Song of the Fallen, even the King of Nothing. Each of them was a living legend. Raised by wolves and nightingale, were known as Changing Star's loyal companions, having braved myriad dangers side by side with the goddess of humanity. They were both revered and beloved, having conquered and ruled 2 of the greatest human settlements in the Dream Realm, Bastion and Ravenheart. Soul Reaper Jet needed no introduction, either. Her fame could only compare to her infamy, and there was not a human alive who didn't admire or fear her, or both. However, everyone agreed that there was no deadlier saint. Among the government forces, meanwhile, her reputation could rival the dead gods themselves. Morgan of Valor and Seishin of Song carried legends of their own, legends that they built themselves, as well as vast legends they had inherited from the fallen great clans. Needless to say, Nightwalker, one of the most accomplished and mysterious paragons of the first generation, who had vanished without a trace, then returned from being dead decades later, was a living legend as well. The information about where they had gone was not hidden, so soon enough, both worlds were buzzing with conversations about whether they would become the second cohort to conquer the 4th nightmare, or if they would perish in its depths. The 6 of them were storied heroes for ordinary humans, but for Sunny, they were simply friends. The world felt strangely empty without Effie, Kai, and Jet. In one of the rooms of the Tower of Hope, 6 memories lay on a slab of white marble. Each belonged to one of the 6 saints who had challenged the 4th nightmare. For as long as they were still alive, the memories were not going to disappear. If something happened to them during the trial of the spell, though, the memories would collapse into a whirlwind of sparks and vanish forever. In the weeks following the journey to Antarctica, Sunny developed a habit of visiting the memory room and looking at the memories, wondering what his friends were going through somewhere out there, in the violent ordeal of the nightmare. Of course, there was no answer. There wouldn't be for quite a while. But seeing the intact memories brought Sunny a measure of solace. Naturally, he did not have a lot of time to stare at the 6 memories. The world was still falling apart, after all. Everything that had been plaguing the human domain before was now exacerbated, both because the apocalypse was gaining steam and because 6 pillars of humanity were missing. It was not only their personal strength that the world was lacking now, but also their influence and leadership. Others rose to the occasion, of course, trying to fill the vacuum, but no one could really replace the 6 people who had gone into the nightmare. As a result, the situation turned grim for a long while. The breach in the realm boundary continued to expand, and more nightmare creatures poured into the waking world. Sunny and Nephice had to abandon the established plan of resettlement and swiftly evacuate millions more people into the Dream Realm, despite the fact that it was not ready to support that rate of population growth. The saving grace was the Storm Sea, where the floating cities were swiftly expanding with the help of the river people. Ananke joined the construction effort personally, vastly accelerating its progress. Of course, expansion of that perilous region of the Dream Realm was not without risk, so terrifying naval battles began to happen there with increasing frequency. In these circumstances, a new generation of warriors received a chance to distinguish themselves. The daughter and grandson of Windflower proved themselves to be worthy successors of their storied bloodline. The Saints of Night and their warriors forged a new reputation for their fallen clan in the absence of its founder. Quite unexpectedly, or perhaps quite the opposite, a man named Gunlog also rose to prominence, fighting side by side with Saints despite being merely an ascended. His aspect was uniquely suited for grueling battles in the depths of the Storm Sea, and his grim determination reminded people why he had been known as the Dark Diver once, before becoming the Lord of the Bright Castle. Another cohort that earned fame and respect in the Storm Sea was Tamar of Sorrow and her warriors. The importance of the Storm Sea citadels had drastically increased, so naturally, the human domain had to commit more forces to defend them. Sunny sent several cohorts of the Shadow Clan there as well. At the same time, Storm Sea was the next destination chosen by Rain, who wanted to participate in the construction of floating cities alongside the river people. So, she became one of his envoys there. Rain and her cohort were not meant to engage in too many battles, but no Awakened could stay away from fighting during the apocalypse. Since Ascended were still relatively rare, Tamar swiftly became renowned among local warriors, earning a reputation as a powerful young master who commanded a cohort of exceptional fighters. But, of course, the moderate success in the Storm Sea did not mean that all the other problems Sunny and Nephi had to contend against disappeared. Humanity was besieged on all sides. The realm boundary was growing more brittle with each month. Nightmare gates continued to open all across the waking world. The nightmare creatures of the dream realm were attacking citadel cities with increasing ferocity, and amidst all of this, their most cherished companions were missing, risking it all in the nightmare. Sunny and Nephi dove into the crucible of the apocalypse, unleashing their supreme powers without holding anything back. They fought more often and more intensely than ever before, barely getting any time to rest. It was a stressful time, a terrifying time. But funnily enough, Sunny felt happier than he had ever felt before. The world was falling apart. The fate of humanity was hanging by a thread, and all of existence was being consumed by war. And yet, Sunny felt at peace. It was peculiar and borderline immoral, but he was content and happy. He was happier than he had ever been before, even. Objectively, his life had become a never-ending nightmare. All 7 of his incarnations were constantly engaged in bloody battles, and more often than not, he returned from the battlefield battered and broken. Worse than the violence and the pain of having his body ravaged and torn was the crushing weight of responsibility that pressed down on his shoulders. Humanity was facing extinction, and Sunny was responsible for humanity. His failures cost countless lives, and his victories were never swift and decisive enough to make him feel like he couldn't have done better. Scores of cities, billions of lives, the very future. All of it depended on Sunny, on him personally, and that burden was too harrowing for anyone to carry. So by all accounts, he should have felt suffocated and exhausted. But he didn't. Instead, every morning he woke up with a smile. Well, not every morning. Sleep was a luxury Sunny could not quite afford at the moment, after all, so he slept no more than once a month. Other than that, though, his life was weirdly idyllic. He got to spend his days side by side with the woman he loved, and who loved him back, knowing who he was. And even if their days as a couple were a bit peculiar, spent all across the 2 worlds battling harrowing nightmare creatures, they found time to enjoy each other's company amidst the carnage. There were quiet moments as well, the mundane moments that were as sweet as moments of passion. Having meals together, watching the sun rise in the silence of an early morning, talking about meaningless nonsense, sharing stories of the past, cutting each other's hair, confessing nonsensical opinions and arguing over them, reading a book over the other one's shoulder, witnessing your partner in their most natural, ordinary moments, and so much more. Sometimes, Sunny caught himself watching as Nephi quietly read the reports that piled on her desk or meditated between battles, feeling like he couldn't be happier. As for the endless clashes against nightmare creatures, despite the grotesque violence and agony of it all, Sunny was enjoying himself on the battlefield too. After all, whether he liked to admit it or not, battling nightmare creatures was more or less his profession. Sunny had spent his entire adult life slaying abominations, and he was damn good at it. And there was immense satisfaction in doing what you knew best, and doing it well. The wounds, the bloodshed, Sunny did not mind it. Not only because that was all he knew, but also because it was not meaningless. He was not fighting to survive, no matter the cost. He was fighting so that others could survive, and his wounds were the cost. So no matter how screwed up it sounded, he was doing what he loved side by side with the woman he loved. What was there to be unhappy about? At the same time, he was spending time with his sister, and his sister knew that they were family. He was watching her grow into a person who was softer and gentler than he was, but also immensely strong in her own way. Rain did not have to receive the same scars he had received, and be forged into the same kind of adamant blade he had become. And that was wonderful. That soothed Sunny's weathered heart and brought warmth to it. Once upon a time, a long time ago, Sunny had watched Rain through a window and then turned away, choosing not to reveal himself. Because she did not need him, because there was nothing good he could offer her, and nothing positive he could add to her life. But now he could offer her the world, and her life was brighter and warmer because of him. There was no cold glass between them, and even if she liked to tease him, like a brat, they had grown as close as siblings were meant to be. Sunny had Nephi and Rain. He also had Cassie, who had once again become his friend and companion. The 2 of them had gone through so much, had achieved so much. Their turbulent and complicated relationship spanned most of their adult lives, encompassing both deep affection and scathing resentment. Now, finally, those tumultuous emotions settled, cooling to reveal a profound bond. Sunny and Cassie continued to develop sorcery together, reinforcing the citadel cities of humanity to help their walls withstand the incessant attacks. Her voice accompanied him into every battle, guiding him and helping him understand his foes. That felt nice. Having grown used to it, Sunny knew that he would feel lonely if Cassie suddenly stopped watching over him one day. There were a lot of other things Sunny enjoyed as well. His ragtag group of misfits, led by Revel, helping him defend the forgotten shore. Academic pursuits with teacher Julius. Teaching Ananke how to weave. Developing his own skill as a sorcerer. Exploring the limits of shadow dance. In short, Sunny was enjoying being alive. Well, technically he was dead. But even then, he felt more alive than ever. The dissonance between his own personal happiness and the dire state of the world was nothing short of jarring. Sometimes, Sunny wondered if he had finally gone completely crazy. After all, only a lunatic would feel content while watching the world end. But then again, if he really thought about it, he had been born into a dying world. In truth, the apocalypse had always been there, hidden in the background. Now, it had merely entered its final act. Sunny must have developed a tolerance to it. Months passed, then a few months more. And just like that, in the blink of an eye, but also in what felt like an eternity, another winter solstice came along. It was then that the situation began to change once more.